I'm Conway Daily Sun reporter Damon Steer, and I'm here with the sheriff's candidate, Justin Worthley, a Republican from Wakefield.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for coming. So I thought about how to start this interview, and I thought the best question would be, what's the most interesting thing about you and your campaign?
The most interesting thing about me personally or the campaign?
Either way.
So probably the most interesting thing personally about me, and it's not really me, it's that my great-grandfather invented rabbit ears.
The TV?
Yeah.
Wow.
For RCA. So the patent was through RCA, but he invented them.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. All right.
Third-party interest, because I didn't do it.
All right. But anyway, I guess maybe go over your professional background and why you're qualified to be a sheriff.
So I was a law enforcement officer for 10 years in New Hampshire, starting in 2012. I started in Rochester, where I grew up. I did 7 years there. Then I worked in Pittsfield for 3 years. In 2022, I pulled my retirement to invest in my farm and stuff. And I'm enjoying retirement, but I'm passionate about law enforcement, the standard being raised, because I worked with some really great people. I know that younger generations, mine and lower, are kind of burnt out.
And how old are you?
I'm 36.
Okay.
And the profession just kind of needs a breath of fresh air, a couple new ideas, and a break from the "we've always done it this way" type of mentality. And I think that I can bring that and increase the standard, get a better product for the public, and do it for basically the same price.
And how long have you been in Carroll County?
I've only lived here since 2022. So I bought my house in Wakefield in 2021, had to renovate the entire house, so I've only been physically living here, but I grew up in Stratford County. I lived in Stratford County my whole life.
And so in your time here in Carroll County, what have you learned as examples of how you want to see change? What are, you've probably seen and read about law enforcement in the area, and what are those things that you want to work on?
I have talked to a lot of people. I had a lot of people reach out to me in my campaign last time. Same thing as this time. And we have a lot of talent in the county. I mean, obviously, you have your individual police departments, and they need a lot of support from your sheriff's office. And that's kind of why I'm focusing on the sheriff thing, because if we can build the office together, because it takes communities, it's not just me. I can be the best, professional police officer in the world, but it takes communities, it takes professional support, and working together to achieve that. We have the biggest complaints I've heard is, no 24-hour coverage is probably the biggest one. In some places have it, a lot of places don't. And the sheriff's office supplements a lot of that type of stuff, but I'm pretty sure that they sign off at around 1 in the morning regardless. And just having staffing. So even during my career, and it's only gotten worse since then, staffing has always been an issue. Now there's many factors for that, and we probably don't have the time to get into all of those right now, but a lot of it is that burnout. You have a lack of staff, you have increasing call volume, because we are having an influx of people moving up to this county. Some people think that's good, some people think it's bad, but it's reality no matter how you feel about it. And it's one of those things that if law enforcement professionals are going to provide a better service, you have to first and foremost have bodies on the street. The ones that are there, they need to care, they need to be capable, and they need to have the training to do the job, the right time the first time, or the right way the first time, I should say, and have the professional support from their administration, whether it's, detectives or supervision or your leadership roles in those type of things. And the main concern that I've heard from people that work in the county is that some of them don't feel valued, and there can be many reasons for that. That's just what I'm hearing, and there's probably a lot more information as to why that is. But I know that that is a fact that overall law enforcement, and really any first responder capacity, there's just too much work and too little people to do it. So my focus is basically going to be to get the training standard where it needs to be, make sure that if we can't have enough people, the people that we have feel supported, they have the tools and training to do their job effectively, and they also have the confidence that when you have to make some of those split-second decisions, some of those, I mean, scrutiny with law enforcement is, you know, you can get chastised for not doing enough, you get chastised for doing too much. I mean, it's a very individual basis. But if the individual personnel have the confidence that they can go in and handle a situation, maybe it's an easy situation, difficult situation, and some of those are life-threatening. If they have the confidence that they can do that well, go home at the end of the day, protect the public, and have the support from their administration, that really provides a better environment for all of us. And that's really why I'm passionate about doing this.
We should probably take a step back and talk about what the sheriff's office does, because it's not strictly a police agency like, you know, a local police department does, you know, service for lawsuits and things of that nature. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the sheriff in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so actually in New Hampshire, most sheriff's departments are doing court security, civil, criminal paperwork service, and transporting prisoners. Carroll County is one of the counties, there's only a couple of them, that actually do a patrol function, which is an added responsibility, obviously, and that kind of even burdens the personnel type issue even more. So it's to supplement the local agencies. Like here in Conway, you know, the police force is big enough where you have enough officers, they do help out around here and do the court stuff, but you have a lot of the smaller towns in Carroll County, like Tamworth and stuff like that, with very small departments, and they are more of a supporting role. I'd like to get it to the point where there's enough staff where we can really boost up that supporting role as far as patrol capacity, and then also just relieve some of the burden for more personnel intensive or time resource intensive investigations, stuff like that. Because, you know, in Pittsfield, it was like a 7-person department, and that included a couple part-time people. And I was actually the investigator. So when you only have 1 or 2 people, or maybe you don't have an investigator to do more in-depth anything, you know, usually that's going to be an investigation or a long case that involves a lot of paperwork or search warrants or something like that. It's hard to do efficiently because you can't work 24 hours a day. No one should really expect you to do that. And it's just, we need the bodies on the street, and we definitely need the support.
How big in terms of deputies is the sheriff's office now, and how much bigger do you think it would need to be in terms of deputies?
I mean, they have some part-time deputies and full-time deputies. I believe it's 14. That I'm not exactly sure on. And part of it is, the way I view it is, when you think about sworn personnel, I've always been on like the worker bee class of it, because you have some people that aren't necessarily in the day-to-day functions that may be in administration. That's actually one of the fundamental things that I want to try and show is leading from the front, in the sense that as the actual sheriff, you obviously have administrative functions, you have multiple meetings you have to go to. There's things where you're not going to just be working the street. But one of the things that I'll be able to offer that the current sheriff doesn't do is I want to actually be out in the public. So I'm a hands-on person. I do the meetings and stuff like that as needed because you have to, and it's a necessary function to maintain the relationships and run the agency. But I actually really enjoy being out in the public and dealing with things and handling calls and stuff like that. So that's also the best way to get buy-in and trust from the community, because if they see you around, they know what you're about, they know how you act on the street. And from a personnel standpoint, if you're leading from the front and you're willing to do everything that you're going to delegate to anybody else, you usually get a lot more buy-in, and that helps morale.
And you mentioned to me last time we talked about being an America First candidate. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's one of those things where it's, you know, it sounds generic, but it's mostly just focusing on our communities. So when I say America First, you know, that gets, you know, it's usually associated with Trump or something like that. That's not going to be happening here. You know, local solutions are kind of my idea, because you'll have that bottom-up leadership. You know, your president isn't going to change our tax rate, or it's not going to change our fire departments or police departments. If we focus on our communities and really bolster how we work together with the agencies and even the public, because one of my biggest things is to have a really good police department, you need those people to be competent for when stuff hits the fan. You know, the really traumatic moments, those things where, you know, you need to be razor sharp and do the right thing in real time. But it takes a good community to have an effective police department. No matter how many police you have, even if you're at full staffing or had a cop on every corner, you're never going to have the same type of availability of information that the public does. You're never everywhere all the time. So if the public trusts you, they trust your decision making, they trust that you're going to do the right thing. If we can all work together, we get safer communities, we get more prosperous communities, and that stuff goes beyond the sheriff's office. I mean, it's not like I'm doing legislation or anything else like that. But I think if we focus on America first, as far as like understanding the Constitution, I'm huge on that, as you know, and what that really means for everybody. If we follow that, then everyone has equality, everyone has the same opportunity to work hard, have a decent place to live, know that your kids can be in the street and have it be safe, drive on the road and know that that's going to be safe, because sometimes that's a little crazy on the weekends. I'm sure you know if you, if you drive around. It's just the basic principle of kind of getting back to that, because I think as a culture we've kind of strayed. So I think if we get back to that, we'll have some new school, you know, flavor with the old school charm of actually having a better tight-knit community.
One thing, and speaking of the public and, you know, having sort of eyes everywhere, you're big on social media. Can you talk a little bit about your social media? You know, I think you're active on Facebook and I think Telegram.
Yeah, I have Telegram, I have Facebook, and I comment on a lot of different things, and that's mostly just because I'm a grassroots candidate. So some people who may see my comments and not like them or whatever, I never set out to be polarizing. I never set out to be controversial, but I do like to start the conversation. So the one thing I'll say is, even if people don't necessarily love everything I say, everything I do comment about or state is from a position of a factual basis. So I want to have the conversations, because it's not just about arguing online. That gets you off in the weeds, and that's usually largely negative. But if we have more of these conversations and can have them respectfully, then we can actually start having solutions for them. Because there's a lot of people that have complaints, there's a lot of people that have legitimate complaints, but until you can have a productive discussion with someone that you don't agree with, you don't really achieve anything. So I'm basically using social media as a mechanism, because I don't have a tour bus, because I don't, you know, I have to work a job every day. So I'm trying to use that to get out and just get these conversations started. And as much as it can be very frustrating, even for me, to do this sometimes, I've actually learned a lot, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me or know that I'm available to be reached out to because of that.
And I was also wondering, you know, in terms of, you know, your first campaign was it 2 years ago?
Yep.
And now you have another campaign. Like, what did you learn from the first campaign that you're now applying in this campaign?
Well, I learned a lot the last campaign, and I had never done anything political. I never necessarily aspired to be in politics. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't love politics. It's just, it dictates most of our lives, and you kind of have to care a little bit, and this is the role that I want to fulfill. I definitely learned that you can say things that you need to pay attention optically to how they sound, no matter how you meant them. They can be spun, they can be taken out of context, and you just really have to be cognizant of that as you're doing it. So, I mean, it's, even now, I'm not a political expert. I'm really only doing this because you have to get to this office, because this is unique in the sense that every other political office is just politics. I mean, it does transcend to your communities, but the office of sheriff really shouldn't have a political affiliation. I mean, it's literally just following the Constitution, making sure that you're providing good service to the customer. In this sense, it's the public. But that doesn't have a political spin to it. So you just kind of have to do this as a means to an end. And I actually do like the fact that sheriffs are elected, because your local chief of police isn't elected. Now, technically, you elect your select board that hires and fires your staff of all your department heads, but you're kind of removed from the process. If you can elect a sheriff that you want, and I wish more people actually understood what the sheriff's office does, so thank you for the opportunity to explain that, you have a vested interest in it, and it almost fast tracks us to the point where you're still separated enough where it's not like you can just march down and tell the sheriff what to do, like, well, you have to do X, Y, Z, but you get to have a say. So if you don't like what I say or don't like what I do, I'll always explain my position, why I'm doing it, and there's always a factual and reasonable basis for anything I've ever done. Now, does that mean everyone likes what I do? No. But I can tell you that in 10 years of law enforcement, I have had the respect of many people who didn't like me because they knew I was fair, they knew I would do the right thing, and I have been in hot water with supervisors and sometimes city councilors and stuff because I will go out of my way for people I don't like and for people who aren't even necessarily great people, because you have to do right by people. And at the end of the day, no matter what you believe in, I think that the karma comes back around, and we have to put out what you want to get back. So if you always do the right thing, sometimes it's going to cost you more, sometimes it's a lot more frustrating in the meantime, but in my experience, it has always paid off in the end.
Let's see. How you got the cowboy hat. And
I do. I don't currently have the cowboy
hat. You don't have it
hat
on right now,
no.
but talk about that. I mean, you're a different personality than our current sheriff. I think that's fair to say.
It's very fair to say, and it's kind of funny that you bring that up, because what started as kind of a marketing thing, because brutal honesty, I grew up watching a bunch of Western movies and stuff, Smokey and the Bandit, you see cowboy hats. They're not common up here. So I started out like, okay, what's going to set me apart just from like a shock value standpoint? So I did the cowboy hat thing. And once I did it, not only are they super practical, they actually help out a lot when it's hot out, and had no idea. People seem to love them, even if they don't love me. They do actually like the hat. I get some ridicule, but honestly, it's mostly overwhelmingly positive. And I actually just like wearing them now. So I don't wear them necessarily if I'm going everywhere, because I did learn it's inconvenient. It's not like a baseball hat you can just kind of like throw on your seat or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's kind of the conversation starter, where I had a lot of people who didn't know me personally, but they knew the hat, which is kind of ridiculous. But it's been a fun experience, and honestly, now I'm a believer. I'm a cowboy hat guy for life. So I don't know if I'm going to really set the trend to bring him back to the Northeast, but I'll try.
I think it was interesting last time you were at the Gibson Center 2 years ago. There was a moment where you gave part of your time to a homeless individual. Do you want to touch on that? Was just an interesting. I've never seen it before in 20 years.
That was a little bit of a trip, but that actually is representative of why I really want to do this. So I didn't know how that was going to go. And thankfully, it turned out well, but I knew it was going to be a dice roll. But you were there for folks that weren't there. It was essentially, we were talking about issues. I think we had 3 minutes. And this gentleman had been hanging out in the area where all the candidates were. And I was just kind of in the back hanging out, listening to everyone. And he was a veteran. So I know that he has somewhat of a checkered past. And I found that out afterwards, but that kind of goes back to the same thing where, you still have to speak for what's right. The person may not be a great person. They may have a checkered history, whether, what's proven, what's not, I don't know. But he was talking about being a homeless veteran and not getting help. So I had talked to him, and he had voiced some legitimate concerns about, the drug issues and how he, in his opinion, he felt that, people that had substance abuse issues were getting all the help and they were littering and committing crimes, but he wasn't getting any assistance. So myself and another candidate, George Mottram, I think he was for state representative last time, we were talking to him, and he wanted to get his voice heard, and a lot of the other candidates, and it was a Republican event, they didn't talk to him. And that's the difference, is like, you have to care about the little guy. I'm the little guy too. I don't aspire to be anything other than just a regular person like you, me, or anybody else. And I figured that if this guy was serious about what his cause was, that he would talk. Or if he wasn't serious, that he would decline my offer to take the time. Because I had my spiel already rehearsed and I knew that what I wanted to cover, but I figured if you want the platform, I have the platform, I'll give it to you, and we'll see how it goes. Thankfully, it turned out okay, and I think his nickname was Stumpy or something, which that was kind of comical too. If my memory serves, I think his name was Edward. But he talked about that, and he was very thankful for that, and at least for that immediate time frame. I don't know where he is today or anything, but I know that George paid for a hotel room for him for the night, so he can get a shower, get a decent meal, have a hotel room, and he actually hooked him up with the VA to get more benefits. Now, where that went, I don't know. I don't know if he took that olive branch and made positive choices or not. But that's really what I've seen in my careers. I've seen people at their lowest. I've seen families lose family members. I've seen families lose kids. And that's the stuff that humbled me, because I had a pretty good life. And when you're a young man like I was when I got in, I was 23, that sobers you pretty quick. And it was one of those things that I never wanted to lose the why. So there was days in law enforcement that you honestly shake your head and you're like, why am I doing this? People don't appreciate it. And it's tough and it's heavy, and you have to have the support system for that, and thankfully I did. But then you'd have those little moments like that that are inspirational and kind of relight the fire, and then it clicks in your mind of, okay, this is why I'm doing it. Because yes, it's thankless a lot of times. No, it doesn't pay great. But there's something bigger for that. When you sacrifice like every person does, and it's not just first responders, you can be in any capacity. You can be a teacher, you can be, even what you do sometimes, right. Like things that you experience. Sacrifice for your fellow man or woman is the stuff that I think we need to get back to. It goes back to my whole premise for why I want to do this. And if everyone does a little bit, nobody has to do a lot. And we really need people that are younger, that have the passion to do it, that are going to do the right thing to step up into these roles, and that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing.
One thing is you're from the southern part of the county, and there's a lot of population up north. How is it trying to get your name out? And you said you're working a job and trying to do this in your kind of your spare time. It sounds like.
Well, I don't know, but I don't have spare time because.
But can you talk about like what you're doing professionally now and the campaign and how you're trying to get around and.
So I'm always available, and any of my information, I put it out on my Facebook and stuff. I put the business cards that I have my phone number, which I might regret that. But it's a dice roll. It's hard. That's why I was really thankful for this time, because I know this will get me some exposure. And it's really just, difficult to do when you have a smaller budget and you do have to work. So I'm in the process of purchasing a business. I started in the automotive world before I went into law enforcement. That's what I've been doing for the past couple of years, because it is a little easier to manage my home life because I have a normal schedule, and ironically enough, it pays more. But I'm in the process of purchasing a business within the county in Ossipee to run a shop, so that's even more chaotic. But it's one of those things where, I set out to do this. I promised I would do it. If people will support me in doing that, then I will step up to the plate and get it done, regardless of the cost to me. And it is tough to get up here or some of the smaller towns, because I have, thankfully, a network of people that have reached out to me. I'm actually going to be delivering some signs and stuff today and some materials. But, it's just going to be reaching out to media outlets, reaching out to people. And it's tough in some of the real small towns, but I mean, I feel like for the budget that I'm working with and the time frame that I'm working with, I'm doing okay, but we'll see how it turns out.
Are you, would you keep your private business while you're a sheriff, or how would that work?
Thankfully, I'm in a situation where I have a couple people that I can trust, where I will not detract from my duties of sheriff. Like, I'm not going to be getting elected and then sitting at, you know, my personal business. I would never do that. It's unethical, and ethics is one of my big things. So I would have to be absent of that, and any type of stuff that I would do for my business would be outside of my, because your salary essentially is the sheriff. So it would be outside of any of my duties, which I'll flex the time around, but I mean, that comes first.
Is there anything that I haven't asked, or anything that you want to get out there?
I mean, honestly, I think you asked some pretty thorough questions. I've covered pretty much everything else. I mean, the thing that I guess I would say to you folks looking at me, or, oh, sorry, I was pointing at the wrong camera. It would be the fact that understand who your local candidates are going to be. I'm just one of them, and I am suited for my role. I obviously feel like I'm your best choice here in Carroll County, but it takes more than just a sheriff, and it takes your local town select boards, your local representatives, and the biggest message that I've had a hard time getting out for people to even support me, is that when the primary is. So for candidates like me, a lot of them have to win a primary to get to the general election. So especially with what's going on politically nationally right now, there's going to be probably high voter turnout in the general election, but my goal right now is September 10th, and that is the primary election. So don't just go vote for me, and don't vote for me if you don't know who I am. Do some research, you know, talk to your friends, talk to your gas station clerk, talk to your mechanic, talk to anybody about, hey, do you know anything about this candidate? Try and vet them out, see if you can figure out, you know, what representatives align with your values, and go vote, because a lot of people are kind of defeatist about it now. They don't think that there's any purpose to it, and that's false. I mean, are things where I want them to be? No. But at the same time, we have to do our part of our civic duty. Part of that is informed voting. So if we do that and everyone pitches in a little bit, I think we're going to enjoy a lot better community in future.
Well, that sounds like a good place to wrap up. Are we good, Rob? All right, well, thank you. Thanks for
Cool,
watching.
thanks, man.